Lord of the Mysteries, Chapter 231, Losses. Klein met Jurgen Cooper in an office at the Rice police station. This young senior solicitor was still dressed formally, as though he was always ready to go to a posh dinner party. He wore a black, double-breasted attire, a white shirt with a stiff collar, a huge bow tie, and bright leather boots, which made the policeman act very polite to him. Jurgen held his half-top hat and looked at Klein with his blue eyes while saying, "The formalities are over. You can leave if you pay the bail of £10, thank you." Klein didn't say anything more, but followed the good-looking but seemingly old-fashioned Jurgen to the police station's financial affairs office that was nearby, where he fished out his wallet and pulled out 2 5B notes. He was grateful that he had all his cash, £95, on him, or else he might have had to borrow it from his good neighbor Jurgen. Of course, the worst-case scenario would be if he had left the money at home. Klein wasn't certain how much of that would be left after the police searched the scene. Yet he couldn't put it in the world above the gray fog because it was possible that he needed to offer bribes to free himself. At present, many newspapers and magazines were discrediting the police as being unsupervised, violent, corrupt, extortionary, and vicious. Klein didn't dare to believe it fully, but neither did he dare to doubt it. After all, Massault's money could very well end up in the pockets of someone in the police station. After paying the bail, Klein followed Jurgen out of the police station and shivered when hit by the humid, cold wind. "After the case is closed, your bail will be returned to you. Of course, you can expect them to voluntarily notify you. Yes, in a week, if no one notifies you that your presence is required back at the station, you can come here and ask for your bail to be returned. In theory, you could still get appropriate compensation, if any, from the other party's estate." Jurgen walked over to a carriage parked nearby. The rain that had poured down during the entire day had finally come to a stop, but the crimson moon remained hidden by the dark clouds. The only light that could be seen on the street was from the gas lamps. All right. Klein almost believed that he would have to part with the £10 forever. He couldn't help but calculate how much it cost him to take up Ian's job. He had been paid £5, but many pieces of furniture and tea sets were destroyed at his home. He either had to buy new ones or get someone to repair them for him. With the materials used, the cost of the carriage, and the cost of mending his clothes, the math seemed to imply that he would be losing money. "If I don't manage to get back the 10 worth of bail money, this would be a great loss." Well, the beyonder characteristic left behind by Malt is actually worth quite a bit of money. Klein got into the carriage and frowned slightly. He had always thought that the private detectives who used their own residences as offices would at most not be entrusted with anything, and wouldn't suffer any losses. But in the end, Klein turned his head to look at Jurgen, who was sitting up straight, and he said with sincerity, "Thank you. Thank you for coming to bail me out. How much should I pay you?" Jurgen nodded very formally and said, "This one's pro bono. I heard from Sergeant Faxine that you were involved in an incident. I believe that we'll have many opportunities to work together in the future. There will be many opportunities to work together in the future." Klein couldn't help but laugh as he said, "Lawyer Jurgen, are you cursing me?" Jurgen shook his head solemnly and said, "No, it's not what you think."
I can live as my true self due to the great conflict between the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun and the Church of Storms. The former had never been able to obtain the right to Pels in the Lone Kingdom. A believer of the Sun Four's languid look instantly vanished. This is the first time I'm seeing a living believer of the Sun. It's not like I can meet diplomats of higher standing. Then should I feel honored? The man in the white mask spread his arms wide and held them up in a gesture of praise for the sun. Instead of answering his question, Forrest smiled and said, "In terms of exorcism and purification, the attendant of the sun is a professional. Our hearts are at rest, so we can begin." The man who claimed to be a believer of the sun didn't drone on. He took out a bad with the symbol of the sun on it and placed it on the round table in the center. Then he used the dualistic ritual method to light up 2 candles. After finishing the preparatory steps, 1 step at a time, he chanted with a loud and abnormally pious tone, The sun that is eternal, you are an inextinguishable light. You are the embodiment of order. I pray to you, please bestow me with your cleansing glow. Please repel the evil spirits in this body. Amid the echoing Hermes incantation, Shicho and Forrest saw bright light burst out from the sun's emblem. Bursting in a pure and warm manner, it was endless like the tide. As the light surged towards the two of them, engulfing them simultaneously, nearly a minute later, everything was restored to normal. All Shicho and Forrest felt was warmth. Feeling the warmth, very comfortable and relieving, it was like soaking in a hot spring or having gone sunbathing. Sherwood, Borough, Rice Police Station. Klein was sitting on a low bench with a group of thieves and drunkards. It looked very disgraceful. Suddenly, he felt warmth on the back of his hand as the coldness of the backland night was dispelled quite significantly. Lowering his head, Klein realized that the 4 black dots representing the mysterious space above the gray fog didn't appear. "Who's being so kind to know that I was feeling a little cold just now?" he mumbled, half jokingly and half curious. As a former inspector, he looked at the thief on the left, who was handcuffed to the pipe, then at the drunker on the right, who could vomit at any moment, but kept yelling about hitting people. He sighed at his present predicament and wasn't sure when he would be free from this. "There should be another test after this, and then I'll be fine. Once I pass it, I hope the police will have their attention on the ambassador and the Zanger gang and ignore my origins as a puny detective. In theory, there's a high chance for that, as long as Mrs. Sammer, Mr. Jurgen, and the others don't say anything of interest to the police. Yes, they have only just met me, so it's impossible for them to know too much. Malt's beyond characteristic was taken away by me and was hidden above the gray fog. He didn't leave behind anything strange, so no one would be able to discover that he used to be a beyonder and have questions about my strength. More than an hour has passed in his self-encouragement. Klein saw the officer with the yellowish brown-yellow beard walking towards him. "Sherlock, Moriarty, come with me to the interrogation room," the surgeon said without further explanation. "Here it comes." Klein stood up and followed. After going around a corner, the surgeon stopped in front of an iron door and gestured for Klein.
As if she didn't hear the latter half of his words, she continued, "If you can maintain this income, you'll get a pretty good life in Backland's Cherwood district at £5 a week. There's no need to sublet another room, and you can hire a maid to do odd jobs, listen to a symphony every other week, or go to the theatrical opera once. Once a week you can play tennis or squash, join a reading salon, and go to a nice restaurant. Of course, if you're already preparing for marriage, you need to save a little money. A weekly salary of £5 is still a little short of being truly decent." "Then what is the required weekly salary to be truly decent?" Kleena asked. £7 at least." Stellan lifted her chin slightly. Klein turned to Luke and said casually, "I heard from your wife that you work at Coin, but I'm not sure what its main business is." "Antheit and charcoal," Luke answered with a smile. "It's no wonder you became a member of the Soot Reduction Association." Klein pondered for a moment and said, "In Backland, how big of a salary does a manager receive? It's seldom mentioned in the newspapers and magazines." "Ha ha ha. It depends on the industry as well as the actual position's job scope. Backland Bank's best manager earns £5,000 a year, but for me, it's about £430 to £440, including bonuses," Luke said casually. "That's about £8 a week." "No wonder." Before Kleena could open his mouth, Stellan Samuel grumbled, "Actually, we could have lived in the suburbs and I'll have a garden and a lawn." Luke would then be able to have a stable and buy a new carriage and the 2FO he's been eyeing all this time, but he would waste too much time on his commute to work. That would be even more valuable. A new carriage, including horses, costs about £100. £8 a week is indeed impressive. Unfortunately, it hasn't been long since I had a pay rise when Klein could only smile in response. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he bade farewell and left, sighing to himself in his heart. Mr. and Mrs. Sammer are still considered nice. If I had a mean landlord, I'd have had my deposit deducted and refunded and be asked to get lost after what happened tonight. After returning home, Klein began laboring. He wasn't in a hurry to go above the gray fog to examine the warm current on the back of his hand. Nor was he in a hurry to do divination because he was afraid that the military's special department was still keeping tabs on him. He decided to go to the bar which Ian had described tomorrow night to buy a gun so as to deal with people who might assault him recklessly in desperation. Klein even planned to find the means to hire a bodyguard, a powerful Beyonder bodyguard. This was so that first he could take advantage of the opportunity to contact Beyond circles without exposing himself, and second it was because he was also afraid that the ambassador's next assailant would have the ability to hide from the military's special department. Although it was a slightly comical thing for a Sequence 8 beyond a vengeful evil spirit in hiding to need a bodyguard, as safety was of paramount importance to Klein. If the price is too high, I'll blow the copper whistle for Mr. Azak, which of course might be more dangerous. I don't know much about sealed artifact 0-08. After cleaning up the house, Klein silently muttered. After the purification ceremony ended, the man in the white mask said to Zoe and Furs, "No matter what kind of sinister spirit it has already been exorcised by me. If it has reached the level of an evil spirit that I'm unable to exorcise, it should have given a response. However, there was none." As he spoke, he poured the water, which had condensed on the emblem of the sun, into a small metal bottle and handed it to Zoe. "Sprinkle it in your room to ward off any remnants." "Thank you." Zoe paid him while feeling the pinch, but she felt a lot more relaxed. Moments after she returned to the living room with Furs, the attendant delivered a note to them. "Miss Arbiter, who has just bought the sheriff